The passive voice, form and function. Form. Verbs in English can be active or passive. Notice that only transitive verbs can be made passive. An active sentence becomes a passive one by a process of transformation. For example, an active sentence like I wrote a letter can be made passive by saying a letter was written. Changes. The object of the active sentence becomes the subject of the passive one. The active verb is replaced by the verb to be plus the past participle of the active verb. The subject of the active sentence becomes the agent of the passive one. We normally use the preposition by, although other prepositions are also possible. Examples. If the active verb is in the simple present, for example, Peter cleans the car, the passive sentence is the car is cleaned by Peter. If the active verb is in the simple past, Peter cleaned the car, the passive is the car was cleaned by Peter. If the active verb is in the present perfect, Peter has cleaned the car, the passive sentence is the car has been cleaned by Peter. If the active verb is in the past perfect, Peter had cleaned the car, the passive sentence is the car had been cleaned by Peter. If the active verb is in the present progressive, Peter is cleaning the car, the passive sentence is the car is being cleaned by Peter. If we have a past progressive form in the active sentence, like Peter was cleaning the car, the passive sentence is the car was being cleaned by Peter. If we have a future simple in the active sentence, Peter will clean the car, the passive is the car will be cleaned by Peter. On the other hand, if we have a future perfect, Peter will have cleaned the car, the passive is the car will have been cleaned by Peter. If we have a conditional simple in the active sentence, Peter would clean the car, the passive is the car would be cleaned by Peter. If we have a conditional perfect in the active sentence, Peter would have cleaned the car, the passive is the car would have been cleaned by Peter. Modal verbs and non-finite forms can also be made passive. For example, the car can be cleaned. Other modal verbs like must, should, ought to, may, might can also be used. Infinitive forms can also be made passive. For example, she wants to be invited to the party. And the same applies to ing forms and gerunds. Poodles like being pampered. We can also use phrasal verbs and transform them into passive verbs. For example, this law has been done away with. But what is the function of the passive? In general, we tend to use the active voice, that is, when a subject does an action to an object, like somebody stole my laptop. The passive voice is used when we want to emphasize the action and the object of a sentence rather than the subject, for different reasons. You don't know the agent, he's been murdered. It's not important, I've been told you were ill. It is obvious or previously mentioned, the thief was arrested. People in general are agents, books can be taken from the library, or in scientific experiments and processes. Unexpected side effects were observed in the experiment. Now, your task for this project consists of a video that must be recorded, a recipe that has to be cooked, passive structures and cooking vocabulary shall be used, and a cooking magazine will be produced.